I'd like to thank the Institute for National Security Studies for inviting me here this evening. This is an appropriate venue to speak about our shared vision for a more stable and secure Middle East. And I thank you for your contributions to the public discourse on this and many other important security issues. I have made many trips to Israel since first coming a decade ago, but this is my first visit to INSS. The bond between the United States and Israel is based on shared principles. We are committed to democracy and the rule of law, to promoting essential freedoms and to protecting human rights. We show fidelity to these principles by a consistent willingness to defend them and to take action. Israel is a country that takes action. This is an underappreciated virtue in diplomacy. President Trump and Secretary Pompeo understand the importance of our alliance, which is why, under their leadership, it is as strong as it has ever been. President Trump recently made the decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognize it as Israel's capital. This had been promised by previous presidents, but never done. President Trump also said enough is enough when it comes to the structurally flawed and biased UN Human Rights Council. He took a stand against anti-Semitism by withdrawing from the UN Human Rights Council. And finally, in May, President Trump decided to end our participation in the Iran nuclear deal. This administration is committed to reversing the balance of power in the Middle East in favor of our friends and partners. This is why President Trump has made countering Iran a top priority. The regime in Iran seeks hegemony and stands as one of the great obstacles to a more secure Israel. This evening, I want to discuss this administration's policy toward Iran and update you on the progress Secretary Pompeo is making to execute the president's vision. Israel is on the front lines of the fight against Iran's dangerous expansionism. Even now, rockets rain down on Israel from Gaza, a territory controlled by Iran's Palestinian partner, Hamas. As always, the United States condemns these attacks and reaffirms our support of the Israeli people. The threat to Israel posed by Iran's violent misadventures demands action, not only for Israel's sake, but also for the sake of stability in the Middle East. President Trump has said the United States will act. He withdrew the United States from the Iran deal because he could not continue to waive sanctions on Iran while the regime expanded its threats to peace and security. The Obama administration gave the Iranian regime the deal of a lifetime to choose a better course, and the Iranians blew it. They could have taken the billions and billions of dollars in sanctions relief and invested in their own people. Instead, they poured it into foreign wars abroad, funding Shia militias, all of which violated the Iran deal's promise to contribute to regional peace and stability. We really shouldn't be surprised that Iran chose the wrong path. Why would Iran spend less money on terrorism when given more money to spend on terrorism? The Iran deal gave the regime strategic cover to operate with greater freedom and flexibility. Paradoxically, it constrained our ability to respond to Iran's provocations enabled by the deal. Iran expanded its range of threats during the negotiation and implementation of the Iran nuclear deal. Thanks to Israel's bold handiwork inside of Tehran, we know that Iran secretly retained a 0.5 ton of nuclear weaponization files, a vast atomic archive. The existence of the archive is a kind of confession by the regime about its endgame. Those who dismissed the discovery of the archive as old news are, to paraphrase Samuel Johnson, listening with credulity to the whispers of fancy. It is our assessment that under the deal, the regime continued and accelerated many of its destabilizing policies. Its backing of terrorism and assistance to terrorist proxies grew, its missile development increased, and its role in regional conflicts deepened. I want to discuss the trend lines we are seeing in each of these areas and explain the actions we are taking. Iran actively supports several terrorist groups designated by the United States, providing them funding, training, weapons, and equipment. Among the groups receiving support from Iran today are Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestine, Islamic Jihad, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, and Al-Ashtar brigades in Bahrain. Hezbollah is Iran's most powerful terrorist partner, and Iran's financial backing to the terrorist group, a staggering $700 million a year, accounts for the majority of its annual budget. Iran also provides up to $100 million annually to Palestinian terror groups. These groups are actively targeting Israel with indiscriminate rocket fire. While Iran's support for terrorist proxies furthers its own corrupt interests, it comes at a deep cost to the Palestinian people's security and prosperity. Despite Iran's claim to support the Palestinian people, the regime invests far more in bombs than in bread. Since 1994, the United States has provided $6.3 billion in aid to support the Palestinian people. Iran, on the other hand, has provided just $20,000 through UNRWA from 2008 to 2017. Hamas acts the exact same way. Although claiming to advocate on behalf of the Palestinian people, Hamas spends vast sums on weapons of terror when it should be investing in the well-being of its own people. It is no surprise that under its authority, Gaza is being driven into the ground in much the same way the Iranian regime is driving Iran into the ground. Since the regime in Iran came to power in 1979, it has conducted terrorist plots, assassinations, and attacks in more than 20 countries across 5 continents. This activity has continued under the deal. In the last 6 months alone, 2 high-profile Iran-backed terror plots were foiled in Denmark and France, laying bare Iran's complete disregard for international norms and standards. Under the nuclear deal, Iran has also forged ahead with its missile development and proliferation activities. The United States can confirm that Iran's pace of missile launches did not diminish after implementation of the Iran deal in January of 2016. Iran has conducted multiple ballistic missile launches since this time, as it continues to prioritize its missile development. We assess that in January 2017, Iran launched a medium-range missile believed to be the Khorramshahr. It is designed to sustain a payload of more than 1,500 kilograms and could carry nuclear warheads. Iran now has the largest ballistic missile force in the region, with more than 10 ballistic missile systems, either in its inventory or in development. Iran has increased efforts to put more of its weapons into the hands of more of its proxies. Credible reports indicate that Iran is transferring ballistic missiles to Shia militias in Iraq. In Lebanon, Iran is helping Hezbollah to build missile production facilities and has supplied the terrorist group with thousands of precision rockets, missiles, and small arms. Iran is providing ballistic missiles to the Houthis in Yemen. Analysis of debris recovered from a November 2017 strike close to Riyadh's international airport indicates that the missile was of Iranian origin. As Iran's support of terrorism grows and its proliferation of missile technologies continues, it is also deepening its role in regional conflicts. Iran has spent billions since 2016 to prop up the Assad regime and support its other proxies in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Iran's involvement in regional conflicts has made it worse, increasing humanitarian suffering and preventing the potential for peace. Iran currently has as many as 2,500 soldiers on the ground in Syria, including IRGC ground forces and Artesh, Iran's conventional army. It also coordinates as many as 10,000 Iraqi, Afghan, and Pakistani Shia fighters in the country. Iran has spent hundreds of millions of dollars assisting the Houthis in Yemen. Tehran's provision of aid to the Houthi rebels, including unmanned aerial vehicles, explosive boat technology, and missile technology, has needlessly intensified an already tragic conflict. In Iraq, Iran has backed Shia militia groups and uses them to drive a sectarian wedge between Shia and Sunni communities. These militias were behind the life-threatening and provocative attacks on U.S. diplomatic facilities recently in Baghdad and Basra, which Iran did nothing to stop. In light of this evidence, it is clear that the Iran deal failed to meet its mark. By withdrawing from the deal, we have made it clear that the United States will not reward the Iranian regime so long as its rogue policies remain in place. We need to see fundamental changes in the regime's behavior before we consider a new deal. Secretary Pompeo has laid out a clear vision of what these changes should look like and has outlined 12 key requirements that Iran must meet. These should not come as a surprise to anyone because they are based largely on the global consensus that existed prior to the Iran nuclear deal. They include, among others, Iran declaring a full account of the prior military dimensions of its nuclear program and permanently and verifiably abandoning such work. We will never permit Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Iran should end its proliferation of ballistic missiles and halt further launching or development of nuclear-capable missile systems. Iran should respect the sovereignty of the Iraqi government and permit the disarming, demobilization, and reintegration of Shia militias. Iran should end support to Middle East terrorist groups, including Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Iran must end its military support for the Houthi militia and work toward a peaceful political settlement in Yemen. Until we see a change in the Iranian regime's policies consistent with the 12 requirements that Secretary Pompeo laid out, we will continue our campaign of maximum economic and diplomatic pressure. As part of this campaign, on November 5th, the United States reimposed the remaining sanctions that were lifted by the Iran deal. In the largest ever single-day action targeting the Iranian regime, sanctions went back into place on more than 700 individuals, entities, vessels, and aircraft. This includes the National Iranian Oil Company, the National Iranian Tanker Company, the Islamic Republic of Iran shipping lines, as well as key financial institutions like Bank Melli, Bank Melat, and Bank Tejerat. Our sanctions will cut off access to the critical funding streams that the Iranian regime needs to bankroll its destructive activities. Our sanctions will also restrict designated Iranian oil tankers from accessing insurance on the international market, leading Iran to turn to self-insurance. If there is an incident involving a self-insured Iranian tanker, there is simply no way that Iranian insurance providers can cover the costs. As I warned last week, Iranian tankers are now a floating liability, and countries, port operators, and private firms should be on notice. Sanctions on Iran's energy sector are especially critical to our pressure campaign because up to 80% of the regime's revenues come from oil exports. In the last 6 months, we reduced Iran's crude exports by more than 1 million barrels, while maintaining adequate oil supply and keeping prices stable. This massive reduction is 3 to 5 times more than many analysts were projecting when President Trump announced our withdrawal from the deal in May. We exceeded expectations for one simple reason. Maximum pressure means maximum pressure. We are committed to a calibrated approach that maintains an adequately supplied oil market while getting importers of Iranian crude to zero as quickly as possible. We will continue this maximum pressure campaign until the regime stops being a force for instability and terror. That is why I am announcing today that the United States has designated 4 Hezbollah-affiliated individuals who lead and coordinate the group's operational, intelligence, and financial activities in Iraq. All 4 of these individuals will be added to the specially designated global terrorist list as a result of their activities in support of Hezbollah's destabilizing operations in Iraq. The United States monitors Iran-backed terror groups like Hezbollah closely, and we will continue to take action to disrupt their destabilizing activities on behalf of Iran. Later today, the State Department will be announcing additional designations, including of an organization active in the Gaza Strip. Our pressure campaign is aimed squarely at the regime and not the Iranian people. Secretary Pompeo has made it clear that the United States stands with them as they call on their government to change its destructive policies, stop squandering their money on foreign wars, and respect human rights. The United States does not sanction humanitarian goods or the sale of food, agricultural commodities, medicine, or medical devices. It has never been our policy to target humanitarian trade with Iran. The regime's attempts to mischaracterize our very clear humanitarian exemptions are a hollow effort to distract from its own corruption and mismanagement. I have heard some say that Secretary Pompeo's 12 demands are too many and that our pressure is too much. They say that the United States should come to the table with a more realistic understanding of the terms that Iran would be willing to accept, and that now is not the time to be pressuring the regime. We disagree. It is this kind of flawed thinking that has allowed Iran to become such a destructive force in the Middle East and beyond. In the face of overt acts of Iranian terrorism, countries have been too content to look the other way. When presented with evidence of Iran's proliferation activities, they have been too eager to rationalize away the regime's actions. This complacency has created unacceptably low expectations of the regime in Tehran. If the demands we have laid out are too many, it is because Iran's destructive activities are too numerous. If our demands are too unrealistic, it is because the world's expectations have hit rock bottom. But we cannot simply admire the Iranian threat any longer. The United States and Israel are now united in this. We are united in this view and bound by a shared commitment to strengthen the region's security architecture. Israel's interests and those of its neighbors will be best served when every country in the region, especially the regime in Tehran, respects the rule of law, abides by fundamental standards and commitments, and disjoins terrorism from foreign policy. If the regime makes these changes, a brighter future awaits the Iranian people. History tells us clearly that America has no permanent enemies. Throughout our history, enemies torn apart by conflict have often become allies united in peace. This same future can exist for the Iranian people, but it is up to the supreme leader to make this bold decision. It should not be a difficult choice. There is nothing noble about leading a great nation into the ground. The Iranian people with their rich legacy and vibrant culture, deserve to be more than a regional pariah. But rest assured that our maximum pressure campaign will continue until Iran addresses our concerns and makes the principled decision to respect the rule of law and to reject terrorism. Anything short of this will fail to achieve our objective of a more stable and secure Middle East. Thank you again for inviting me to speak with you this evening.